What is up, guys? This is Orca Flop, and today we're going to be reviewing the one and only 2019 103rd running of the Indianapolis 500 presented by Gainbridge now this year. And it took place yesterday on Sunday. It was a part of the three big races, but by far this is the most prestigious race, and it's the greatest race in the world. So how about we review it? And we're going to start off with the guy, none other than Simon Pagenaud, who's had probably the best month of May of anyone, leading us to the green flag as he took the pole, and he was starting on the front row with Ed Carpenter and Spencer Pigot. So 2 Ed Carpenter cars and 1 Penske car. So that was very interesting. And on the very initial start, Pagenaud got a great jump on Ed Carpenter and Spencer Pigot as Will Power zoomed around Spencer Pigot to take third. Joseph Newgarden was battling with Pigot and Power for that third spot as well. Graham Rahal was battling with Oriol Servia. There were passes everywhere. It was unbelievable to see. There was so much passing and so many good battles at the very beginning of this race. But unfortunately, that led us into our first caution of the race for poor Colton Herta having a gearbox issue. He was the fastest running Honda this whole month of May. He qualified 5th, and the poor guy had a gearbox issue and ended up DNFing by lap 6. So heartbreak for Colton Herta. You never want to see someone go out that early in the Indy 500, especially considering the fact that Colton Herta has had by far a rookie sensation season. So, not fun to see Colton Herta get exited out that early. I kind of wish he could have stayed there and made a run had a run for his money. So, good luck to Colton Herta next year. But God, that sucked, seeing as how he started 5th. And it came down to a mechanical failure for him not being able to win the 500. That's not something you ever want to see. And I think Harding will come back in the month of May with more motivation than ever. So I guess you can only take something good out of Harding from that one. Well, you can, but you can also take something bad because he DNF'd. So you could tell that Colton Herta had a ton of disappointment in his interview. And yeah, he definitely wants to come back next May and make a run for his money and try to steal the next year's Indy 500. And that brought out our first yellow after all that great passing. We went green again. Simon Pagenaud. Oh, I forgot to mention that on that initial start, Ed Carpenter was really challenging Simon Pagenaud for the lead of the race. But Pagenaud was able to block him off and manage those runs. Except the only fact is, as I'll get into here, we went green again after no one really went into pit after Colton Herta had his gearbox issue again. Rip Colton Herta. Wish he had a better run and a better shot at it. So hopefully Harding will come back next May and bring something good to the table. But we restarted again. Pagenaud again got a lightning restart on Ed Carpenter and took the lead. He held the lead for the race. And Ed Carpenter was just trailing behind him as now Will Power dropped back to 4th after Spencer Pigot got back around him. Newgarden was sitting there in 5th, and it seemed like it was the Chevys that were strongest. But then Alexander Rossi got by Sebastian Bourdais after a little bit, and he seemed to be the fastest Honda of the race as he was trailing behind Joseph Newgarden. He was trying to get runs back and forth, but he couldn't because he even said on his radio that it came down to sheer horsepower. This is something we knew prior to going into the 500, is we knew that the Chevy Aero Kit was way more dominant than a Honda Aero Kit, and we knew the Chevys would be strong and they'd have the most horsepower and overall speed. And it kind of showed when Rossi just didn't have enough time to get a run down the straightaway and pass Joseph Newgarden because overall they cut through the air better and had more horsepower. But the Honda's also an advantage too, and we're going to get into that right here, right now. Now, over the course of this run, nothing much happened. Everyone kind of stayed single file. There weren't too many passes. A couple passes were made by Santino Ferrucci on Graham Rahal and Takuma Sato, but that was about it. And then fuel mileage came into play as Simon Pagenaud led us into our first round of green flag pit stops, going in, taking fuel in 4 tires casually. And it seemed like from here on out with this whole fuel mileage gamble, it seemed like the Hondas were getting better gas mileage because over the course of these green flag pit stops that we were seeing, Alexander Rossi would get out ahead of Carpenter. He'd get out ahead of Newgarden just solely on staying out longer and having a faster pit stop. Scott Dixon was having the same thing too. He's running a Honda. He was able to get great pit stops and take advantage of what he had. And the Honda V6s overall had better gas mileage than the Chevy V6s. So that allowed the Hondas to start climbing up without having to make on-track passes. So that was the advantage the Hondas had for in the Indy 500 for the longest time, because they've overall had better engines. Now, going to the 2021 rules package, I don't know. That might change, but for right now, with this universal aero kit and spec V6 twin turbo V6, the Hondas get the best gas mileage. So that's why you were seeing guys like Bourdais and Rossi climbing up slowly over the pit cycle. But pit road, I would say, for this Indianapolis 500 was pretty eventful, as James Davison, who was having a top 10 run early on and no one was really talking about. He qualified well and he was running well. No one really spoke about him until this incident where he was going into pit road, missed his pit box, and then Helio Castroneves punted him into his pit road and sent a tire across pit road, which thankfully didn't cause a caution. That could have been bad. But Helio ended up sending him down pit road and spinning him. Helio ended up getting a penalty for that. He had to do a drive-in penalty because IndyCar felt as though that was, I guess, a bullshit move, even though I thought it was an accident, because I didn't know James Davison missed his pit box and probably shouldn't have missed his pit box to begin with. So I call it a racing incident, but it was IndyCar's call. They said that Helio ended up going a lap down after that, and that penalty kind of hurt him for the rest of the race. I think of all the Penske cars, Helio didn't have the least pace of all of them. So, I mean, like, he could have tried. He was kind of stuck in 13th, right where he qualified. But that penalty just made everything worse for him, and it seemed like he didn't have the car to really bounce his way back through the field. So, sucks for Helio Castroneves. Good luck next year, I guess. But, yeah, so Helio got that penalty, and he wasn't able to recover. James Davison wasn't able to recover from that spin either, as he just kind of mired through the back, as I think his rear wing was a bit damaged, and they couldn't fix the panel to it. So that wasn't quite good for James Davison. His 500 would be over, as well as Helio Castroneves. And then we had more pit road incidents, as Will Power went into pit road. He was running third. He was by far one of the fastest cars at Indianapolis this whole month of May, along with Joseph Newgarden and the other Penske cars with Ed Carpenter Racing. He went into pit road, took 4 tires, except he ran over his own pit crew's air gun, and he got a penalty, so Power had to go a lap down. And Power was one of the fastest cars at Indianapolis. He was the defending Indy 500 winner, and he was fast this whole race, and that one penalty with him running over the air gun cost him the 500, and you could tell he was disappointed within the car, and poor Power, man, that sucks. And he just ended up falling back continuously, and he couldn't really make his way back up either. And then it came down to really just kind of pacing through the field. This was by far the most boring part of the race. No one was able to pass each other. Everyone was kind of gapped to the point where they couldn't slipstream down the straightaways and make a pass and a move. So that kind of held everyone back for a while. So Pagenaud just kind of held the lead. Ed Carpenter held on to second. Rossi was trying to get by Newgarden, but the aerodynamics of the Chevys was too much for Rossi, and he couldn't get by given the track conditions as well. We thought it would rain here too, but that never turned out to happen. We thought it was going to rain at some point, but it never did, which in the end, I'm good. I'm not complaining, but I thought it'd bring in some interesting strategy, and it did, but in the end, it created less good racing in the middle of the race. But we'll get on to the end of the race, so don't worry. So then everything just kind of cycled out. Piggott was stuck in third. Newgarden was fourth, and then Rossi was fifth. He gained a couple spots. Bourdais was running up towards the front too. Those are the two fast Hondas by far the entire race, and they were trying to make something happen, but they couldn't. And then we got our second caution of the race for the guy who bumped Fernando Alonso out of the Indy 500. Kyle Kaiser ended up trying to move out of the way for Will Power on the outside, and he ended up losing it in turn 4 and hitting the wall. So Kyle Kaiser was the first one to really wreck out of this race, and he ended up DNFing. So, wow. Kyle Kaiser, man, he was like one of the biggest stories prior to the Indy 500. He was the guy who bumped Fernando Alonso and had no sponsorship, and neither did Juncos Racing have any funding whatsoever. So, cool to see Kyle Kaiser bump Alonso out, but in the end, he ended up wrecking out. So, not the greatest way. I don't think Kyle Kaiser wanted him to end his 500. He was the first one to wreck out of the race, so very unfortunate for Kyle Kaiser. I hope Hoon Coast Racing can come back next year strong, and I'm sure Kyle Kaiser will want to as well. And then we went green again. Pagano got, again, a jump on the restart, except this time Ed Carpenter was really close to challenging him for the lead. And it was getting very good here. And there was some better racing going on here as, what I want to say, I can't remember everything that happened, but I know that Santino Ferrucci made a couple of really good passes on Graham Rahal. And Oriol Servia on this caution was staying out since he went a lap down, so he stayed out. And now it was starting to get sunnier through the track, and it was creating warmer temperatures, so the racing got a little bit better. But it wasn't as good for drafting, but the racing somehow was overall better. And Pagano got around Servia. Oriol Servia was kind of holding up everybody. But, man, Alexander Rossi, dude. He was having a tough time with Oriol Servia. Oriol Servia was a lap down. Rossi was just trying to get around him to make some track position, but for some reason, Oriol Servia kept running Rossi's line and kind of cutting him off from getting to Joseph Newgarden. And Oriol Servia, for some reason, was racing Rossi like it was for the 500 win, and Rossi was mad. He was furious. He was pumping his fist at him and showing his displeasure towards Oriol Servia and the way he was racing him. Rossi managed to get around him, though, but I have never seen Alexander Rossi get that mad in the car. Usually no one really has, because Rossi's one of the guys who's more laid back and chill and just kind of goes with the flow. But in that sense, it shows the passion for the Indy 500 and how much drivers really want it, because of the way he was treating Oriol Servia towards those closing laps, and the way he was racing him and showing his emotion. So you could tell Alexander Rossi was really mad. I thought he flipped him off down the front straightaway when he went to the outside. He pumped his fist. I thought he was flipping him off because I thought that's how mad he was. But it turns out Rossi got over it a little bit after, but still he was really pissed at Oriol Servia. And I don't know why Oriol Servia would do that. At that point, it's like, okay, you're on the lead lap now, but like the leaders have passed you, and you're dropping back and you're a lap down. Why are you going to race the guy who's in fifth that was going for an Indy 500 when you're literally ineligible? Like, I don't know if he was trying to catch a caution or what, but I thought that was dumb. Like, he didn't race Pagano that way, and Pagano was the leader. You would think he'd want to stay in the lead lap, so it made no sense to me why Servia raced Rossi that hard. So I totally understood Rossi's frustration. That just seemed dumb on Servia's part. I was thinking, as a driver, Oriol Servia maybe wouldn't do something like that, but he did, and he kind of held back Alexander Rossi. And at that point, I was like, well, nobody hold up Alexander Rossi because he's going to wreck you. But Rossi was really mad at Servia, and I don't blame him because I don't think, given Servia's position, I don't think he should have been doing that, especially since the guys in the top 5 are the ones who are really running for the race of their lives right now. So if you're a lap car, just move out of the way and let it be. So I don't think Servia should have raced Rossi that way. I thought that was dumb. So Rossi had every right to be mad. And then after that, we kind of stayed green once again, except we had better racing as Ed Carpenter was challenged Simon Pagano for the lead. Rossi got around Newgarden for the first time, and he was making his way up slowly but surely. I think he got around Piggott as well, so Rossi was up to third, trying to go for Ed Carpenter, but then green flag pit stops occurred, and then Simon Pagano, and Rossi is on a mission at this point. He's the fastest Honda by far, and he's going for everything he's got. He got around Piggott, he got around Newgarden, he was challenging Carpenter before another round of green flag pit stops occurred, and Simon Pagano went into pit road, took 4 tires and fuel, and he went going, and everyone was going to make their usual pit. Carpenter went in at the same time Piggott did, because I think Ed Carpenter Racing, they all had an organized strategy, and Ed Jones was the only Ed Carpenter car that really wasn't fast. Power was slowly but surely making his way back up there, and it was right after Joseph Newgarden pitted that both Marcus Ericsson, who was running 13th for the majority of the race, along with Helio Castroneves, he was running in the top 15, probably by far the best Aero Schmidt car at the race. Hinchcliffe wasn't really much of a contender. Marcus Ericsson, at the same time, Rossi was ahead of him. Rossi was going into his pit stall, and Marcus Ericsson spins out into pit road, and hits his rear wing and crashes on going into pit road. So that was insane. Marcus Ericsson, I really personally don't think he's a good driver. He didn't really catch my eye at all when he was in F1 either. Like, he's just not a good driver in my opinion. He hasn't really shown me that he's capable of being talented. Like, sure, of all the Schmidt cars at the 500, he's run good, but me personally, I don't think he's all that great. He's honestly kind of trash. If I had to put worst drivers in IndyCar lists, I think he'd be number one and Ed Jones would be number two. Ooh. Marcus Ericsson was never good at all. He was terrible in F1. And what do you know? He can't even go into pit road simply in IndyCar. So, might want to work on that, Marcus Ericsson, if you want to stay at that Schmidt car, because pretty soon you might be on your rocking chair. But then again, I think Marcus Ericsson's a paid driver, so I don't think he'll be leaving anytime soon. But God, Marcus, if you can't even go into pit road easily in an IndyCar, and yet they have pit limiters, that's really sad. So Marcus Ericsson's fucking terrible. Moving on. But right as Rossi went into his pit stall, he had a fueling issue. They couldn't get the fuel into his car. They kept having to pull it out and put it back in, and Rossi was banging the steering wheel. He was so mad because Rossi made up so much track time at this point that he couldn't afford a mistake. And they couldn't get the fuel in. So Rossi continued to get screwed over by his pit crew, and they couldn't get the fuel in, and I was holding them up. So he ended up dropping back to, I think it was 8th. Like, he lost a ton of track time here, except for the fact that he did catch a lucky break, because at this point, Sebastian Bourdais and Graham Rahal were racing each other for position, and Graham Rahal tried to make a move on the inside of Sebastian Bourdais, and this caused our first big wreck as Sebastian Bourdais cut down on Graham Rahal and caused a massive wreck, and Bourdais slammed the wall and nearly flipped over. Rahal hit the wall as well, and as they were wrecking, Rahal was showing his displeasure. He was pumping his fist at Sebastian Bourdais as they were wrecking, so I don't know if Bourdais saw that or not, but you could tell Rahal was very furious. Charlie Kimball and Zach Veach got collected. They weren't really contenders, but still they got collected nonetheless. Santino Ferrucci got around it by just diving through the grass. That was pretty interesting. And this was a very dramatic moment in the race because Graham Rahal was not happy with Sebastian Bourdais. And as soon as they stopped, he got out of his car and went up to Bourdais and basically chastised him for what he did. And I don't blame Graham for being that upset, though, because this is open wheel racing. It's not like NASCAR where you can chop down on someone's nose and be able to get away with it because you have that side force that allows you to save it. It's open wheel racing, and if you make any sort of contact at all, you're taking a big risk. And I don't know why, of all people, Bourdais would be the guy to just chop someone's nose off going into turn 3 at Indianapolis, given that this track to begin with is so tight even for open wheel cars. And I just would never think Bourdais would make a move like that, so I don't blame Rahal for being upset. I think Bourdais should have given him way more room. Like, he just totally cut him down into the grass and caused himself to wreck and multiple other cars to wreck. So I don't blame Graham Rahal for being upset by that. I would be too. It ruined his 500. It ruined many others' 500s because of an arrogant move like that. So, Bourdais. Now I know Sebastian Bourdais never been a fan of oval racing. But I would think at least Bourdais would be experienced enough to have the knowledge to not chop someone's nose midway through a corner at Indianapolis. That's kind of absurd to me, if you ask me. And meanwhile, Simon Pageau was kind of just cruising. He's been leading this whole thing. He's been dominating. And they went under a red flag for this, so everyone was parking. Rossi made his way up to, fell back to 8th. So Rossi would be on a mission from this point on. So regarding the Sebastian Bourdais, Graham Rahal incident, I really don't blame Rahal for being mad. I just would never think, I guess, that Bourdais would be the one to make a move like that, since Bourdais is one of the more experienced drivers within the field. So it surprised me to see Bourdais do something that stupid. You can't make a move like that in Indianapolis. Even in NASCAR, you're taking a big risk by making a move like that. But in open wheel racing, that is literally a death wish. I think Bourdais is in the wrong. That's my personal stance. And I understand why Graham was mad. So I think Graham got out of his car, showed his displeasure towards Bourdais, and then they both went to the ambulance, and they kind of carried on from there. And that was the only big wreck in this race, actually. It took out, I believe, 5 cars. I want to say maybe 4. let's see, Veach, Kimball, Bourdais, Ray Hall, and I think maybe there was someone else. I don't remember. But I think 4 cars were in that wreck, and Bourdais took a hard impact. Ray Hall seemed okay, but I think his axle broke, so it wasn't going to get anywhere. So sucks for Bourdais, Ray Hall, Kimball, and Veach to get out like that. Especially Kimball and Veach. They were just kind of being there, and they were running the race, and they ended up getting collected in that. But I definitely think Bourdais was in the wrong there, and I understand why Ray Hall was mad. I just can't... I don't hate Sebastian Bourdais, but I just never would think Bourdais would make a move like that. That shocked me. And then after that red flag, we had a very long caution stint as Simon Pagenaud and Rick Carpenter, and they were kind of... I don't know if they were still clearing up the track. I know they were putting Speedy Dry down, but it was a long caution and red flag, and they went like, 5 laps of cautions, so that wasn't really fun to watch. But then the moment of truth and what made this race absolutely great. The restart happened in the 103rd running of the Indy 500, and Alexander Rossi was on a mission. He got a great restart and powered through up to 5th. And Joseph Newgarden got a great restart too as he powered around Simon Pagenaud. And Joseph Newgarden took the lead around Simon Pagenaud. He got by Carpenter and Pagenaud and took the lead. And these final laps I'm just going to describe to you because they were outstanding. Pagenaud, with about 5 to go, made a run at Joseph Newgarden, took the lead back from Newgarden, and here comes Rossi, who gets around both Newgarden and Carpenter, and now he's on a mission towards Simon Pagenaud. And from this point on, it was probably the most entertaining finish I've watched to an Indy 500 live. As with 4 to go, Alexander Rossi made a run down the front straightaway and took the lead from Simon Pagenaud. And at this point, I thought, oh man, Rossi's going to get his second Indy 500. And out of freaking nowhere, here comes Takuma Sato. Where's Takuma Sato been? And he takes the 3rd spot. And he's trying to make a run for his money as well. He's trying to draft off of Pagenaud and Rossi. And he's trying to get there. It was absolutely insane. Insane. I couldn't believe it. Takuma was making another run for his life in the Indy 500, coming out of absolutely nowhere. He's been running in the top 10, but he's been utterly irrelevant. But I was like, come on, Takuma. I was hoping Takuma could get his second 500 win, but no. Like I said, it was down to Pagenaud and Rossi, and with 3 to go... Rossi had the lead, but then Simon Pagenaud ran back down Rossi and took back the lead of the race. And then Rossi kept trying to make moves. And on the final lap, Simon Pagenaud used the swerving tactic down the back stretch, was going up and down and up and down, and Rossi couldn't get there, but Rossi kept getting the runs out of 4. And with 2 to go, he nearly made a pass for Pagenaud on the lead. Almost did it, but Pagenaud was able to stick it in there. And Simon Pagenaud with the final lap, Rossi tried to make one last move. It wasn't enough, and Simon Pagenaud, the Frenchman, wins his first Indianapolis 500. Oh my gosh, that was... I kind of just redid the finish in my head because that finish was highly entertaining. 2 very talented guys within IndyCar in this day and age duking it out for the Indianapolis 500. That was one of the best finishes I've seen in the Indy 500. It kept me on the edge of my seat because I thought Rossi was going to get a run on Pagenaud and run him down towards the end. But you know what? Simon Pagenaud wins the 103rd running of the Indianapolis 500. 2 wins in a row for the Indy 500 for Penske because last year Will Power won it. And Simon Pagenaud finally wins an Indianapolis 500. Shout out to some of my friends, Race Day 2011 and Original Big Bry, 2 big Simon Pagenaud fans. I could tell you guys, I just imagined how you guys were feeling. I was happy Pagenaud won because I've always liked Pagenaud. He's got by far one of the best personalities and probably one of the nicest guys in IndyCar and in the garage area. And it's good to see someone like Simon Pagenaud win an Indy 500. That is amazing. He immediately, as soon as he went into victory lane, he put the little bush around him with the flowers and the checkered flags. And then he took the beautiful Indy 500 white milk tradition and he poured that milk all over himself because the guy won the 500 and he won the most prestigious race in the world. So congratulations, Simon Pagenaud, on winning the Indy 500. He dominated the race, had by far one of the best cars, and he had a great month of May in general. He won the IndyCar Grand Prix on raw speed. He got the pole for the 500, and he won the 500. Simon Pagenaud was able to execute this whole month, and he did it in perfect fashion. And it's so good to see someone with a personality like Pagenaud get it done and win the Indianapolis 500. And this will definitely go down the history books as one of the most entertaining 500s, from the test sessions with McLaren and Alonso all the way to that beautiful finish between Rossi and Simon Pagenaud. Poor Rossi almost got it. He drove his ass off there too, and you can tell in the interview he said, "Oh well, it's sheer horsepower." Yes, the Chevys have more horsepower than the Honda Aero kits, but I think Alexander Rossi did a great job of outperforming his car, and he showed his true talents once again, and proving that his Indy 500 win in 2016 was not a fluke. So it's awesome to see that we've had 4 different Indy 500 winners. The last what? 3 years. 3 years. The last 3 years we've had different 500 winners. So that's awesome to see. And man, Team Penske always seems to be executing at Indianapolis one way or another. I think Ed Carpenter will get there at some point. He's been fast these last 2 years, especially with the new Universal Aero kit. So I think Ed Carpenter will get there. And I definitely think Rossi will get another Indy 500, especially when the new engine regulations come out. I think he's going to be one to watch in these next few Indy 500s. So Simon Pagenaud is still probably the happiest man in the world right now. Both him and Power didn't win a 500 prior to 2018, and now Power won it last year, and now Simon Pagenaud wins it this year. And that beautiful green Menards number 22 Chevy of Simon Pagenaud finally wins an Indy 500. So Simon Pagenaud's first Indy 500. I'm so happy for him, man. You could tell how happy he was. And that's not fake. The drivers actually show this emotion when it comes to winning something this big. So awesome for Simon Pagenaud to win the 500. I can't even explain how happy I am for him. And it's good to see a new winner for the Indy 500 once again. So Pagenaud, I'm sure, is still celebrating him winning the 500. And it was awesome to see him in the Corvette going around the track and saluting to the fans about him winning. So I got to see him kiss the bricks as well with him, his wife, and all his pit crew members too. So, God, you got to love the Indy 500, man. And as for a rating, I give this race rating a 9 out of 10. Solidly 9 out of 10. Yes, the middle of the race was boring with the fuel mileage and maybe the pit strategy, but I personally thought the middle half was boring. But my God, that finish was so entertaining, and it kept me on the edge of my seat for so long, as well as the initial start was good too. The drama between Bourdais and Rahal, that is why the Indy 500 is the greatest race in the world. You've got dramatic fights, dramatic finishes, fuel mileage, underdogs. You got bump day, carb day. Everything that comes together at Indianapolis Motor Speedway is what makes the Indianapolis 500 the greatest race in the world. So overall, what can I take away from this race? I think we've known this since last year. I just figured I'd touch on it. The Universal Aero Kit is not the greatest aero kit for oval racing. It's been a little bit less entertaining, but I still think that finish proved to be that it can be worthy of oval racing. So for the people that say the Universal Aero Kit isn't good at ovals, yes, you're partially true, but I think that finish right there demonstrates that that the Universal Aero Kit is good in certain cases. So I think the Universal Aero Kit is great. It's put on good racing, not at the ovals, but for this Indy 500, the Universal Aero Kit did prevail, and it proved that both Honda and Chevy were able to compete with each other equally because of the equal advantages they had on different circumstances. So it was a very interesting race to watch. The initial start was great. There was fuel mileage a lot towards the middle, especially with the green flag pit stops. And towards the end, there was a shootout between Rossi and Pagenaud ended up executing and win the Indy 500. So I hope Pagenaud's still drinking milk right now, and I hope he's still celebrating. That was one of the best Indy 500s I've ever watched. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Congratulations to Simon Pageau on winning the 103rd running of the Indy 500. Let's see if he can have another great May and go get him next year. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really enjoyed this race, and I hope you did too. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.